Okay. Yeah, so teaching methods for physics, West African school examination. So the first thing I want to say is that we need to give our best, as teachers, especially, we need to give our best. I know it's difficult, especially in a society where you're not being compensated properly for all the work you put in. And to be honest, I have been there. I also feel that way. But what I find is that even if I am paid so well, at least I found this out later in life, even after I had stopped teaching secondary school, because I'm still a teacher. So well, I discovered that no one can actually pay you the full worth of the job as a teacher. I don't think we can ever get fully compensated. So which is why I think that the best thing to do is to put in your best. So give it your best shot. If not for anything, but for the sake of tomorrow, for posterity's sake. I find satisfaction, I find joy when I see my students now doing so well, doing so well. So many of them, even when they were not exactly my favorite, I am not their, favorite teacher while they were in school, because probably I was a bit so serious on them. But when they leave the four walls of the secondary school, they end up finding it so useful that I was that serious with them, because even when you get to the university, for the first part, especially if you continue in science, it's your first year, second year in the university, it's still pretty much secondary school things. So, and this is why, again, for some people who end up doing examination malpractice, I think is more is more like penny wise pound foolish kind of situation, because you could get all of the grades to get out of secondary school and then get into university, but then you will still get stuck because you still meet all of those things you did not want to study. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Anyway, so I was just talking about um I was talking about the issue of exam malpractice. So you could do all of that, get good grades, then get into university, and then you struggle. So why struggle when you can learn it, right? So which is why I advise that students go back to learn what you're supposed to learn. There's no need of doing exam malpractice, because it haunts you back. It turns you back, really. So, but for the teachers in general, I'm just saying, for posterity's sake, for the sake of God, giving your best, even when the compensation isn't matching the effort. So that's the first thing there. Then it's important to understand the concept well enough before the class. So I find sometimes that if you do not fully understand the concept, the way the approach, everything while you are teaching the students will not flow. And even sometimes the students would know. I don't think the teachers know it all. Even myself, I still do not know it all. So, but it's just the right practice to get ready, prepare before your class. And it even helps you to be confident. So, like, yeah, we are confident when you get to the class. It will help the students as well to believe what you're saying, and to help with their understanding, apart from the confidence, to help them to understand as well. And it keeps you in a better position. If you're asked question as a teacher, you could answer it without being afraid, right? So that I find very useful, especially, like, I think some subjects you can get away with that. You can just enter the class and babble all through it, and it wouldn't make any difference. There will not be any challenge. But for some kind of subject like physics, it can always lead to a disaster if you do not prepare before you go in there. So, very important. Then the other point is the method of teaching. So I can spend the whole day on this. The fact that there are different technologies that we can leverage these days to make it easier for understanding physical concepts. That there are now ways that you can use to make the physics concept easy to understand. So using illustrations. So if you are explaining, for example, gravity, there are examples around us that would make it to make sense. For example, the mango tree, you know mango. So the mango, when it's ripe, and not just mango, any fruit really, what happens? They will fall. So what makes them to fall when they are ripe? They are able to fall because of gravity, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. The same way you can think about rain. I mean, rain is a combination of gravity, the saturation of the clouds in the atmosphere, but of course, gravity makes it to fall. Now, these are examples. And if you are having a hard time to understand gravity, by the time I use these examples, you would understand a little bit. So that's what I'm trying to talk about. So illustration. So what I just talked about is actually an example, but illustration is similar, trying to demonstrate or explain what the topic is about in a way that the people will understand it, okay? Good. Then animation. So these days, there are actually animations on the internet that when you watch, it will help to drive home that concept. So this is useful for you, even as a student. You can, since you have a phone, you can actually look out for animations. For example, I'm sure you'll be wondering how does how does what would be a good example for me now? How does an eclipse happen? How does eclipse happen? I'm sure you've done rays of light, the rectilinear propagation of light. Now, one of the implications of that is eclipse, right? When if you remember, it's because of the fact that light travels in a straight line. That is why eclipses happen. So using that as an example, but have you thought about what does this eclipse look like? If you have not experienced it in your country, it may not make sense, right? But maybe if you take a look at a video showing, let's say, an animation or an artistic impression of what that means, it will help you to understand the concept. So you understand both the eclipse, you understand the rectilinear propagation of light, which is what is causing that effect in the first place. So this is the power of technology, right? So I'm just saying that using them while teaching subjects like physics or even learning physics in general is very important for good understanding. So having said that, I will go ahead. Okay, so there is another method that I don't think we use it like common. We don't use it often in Africa, and it is this inquiry-based method of teaching. So this involves teaching in a way that the students find the answer to the questions, find the solution to the concept by themselves. So it's very student-centered. So as opposed to just telling you what it is, like I'm doing right now, the inquiry-based method is focused on you asking questions about a topic and asking so many little questions that would eventually help you to find the understanding you need concerning that topic. Now, this method is so useful. However, I know that it's time consuming, and given the time constraint, that a typical physics syllabus is, required to cover the entire. So for a teacher to cover the entire syllabus in a term or a section, like, I think that time is limited, especially if you want to apply this method. And that could be one of the challenges. But I think that once in a while, we should, apply this method to even help the student come up with answers themselves. Because when people ask questions, they spark curiosity. Their intelligence quotient is exercised, right? It increases your IQ. So instead of just dumping the results to you and the answers to you, is best, that you come up with the answers yourself. And that way you must have thought about different things, made some mistakes, and all of those are fine. But when you finally get to the solution, you will be so proud of yourself. the first time I tried the inquiry-based method, I felt like a scientist because it was so satisfying. I felt so good. And I think we should do more of that too. All right. Now, this is where the students would not like, but I would keep saying it. So continuous assessment, especially from past questions, they are so important. Taking questions from here and solving on your own as a way of practice will help you to get used to the question asked and how to answer them. It just helps you generally with getting the best results for your Wassce examination. As a teacher, I had my student, I make them solve a lot of that. Almost every week or every other week, they solve 1 year and I have to mark them. It wasn't funny as a teacher to even mark those things. It's really a lot of work. But I had to do it because that's the only way the students will even try to do the assignments in the first place. If you're not going to mark it, they won't do it. So I have to do it, have to mark it. But I find that even though it's challenging, but at the long run, it helps the students to get used to the format and also how to answer those questions. So this is very useful. Okay. The other thing, so I find from the syllable or the curriculum, the SS2 work seems to be a lot compared to SS1. I think SS2 and SS3 is just too much, like it's condensed. I mean, I don't have access to changing that, but I think that at least for the examination questions, if it begins from, let's say, early SS2 to look like WAEC, it helps for the students to get used to the format. So imagine your normal class looking like WAEC questions, your normal class examinations looking like WAEC questions. By the time you do that, I think you need up to 3 hours to answer the WAEC question. I think that's what they give. 3 hours or 2.5 hours. So imagine you now do that for your normal examinations for 3 times before you actually do the WAEC. You will be very okay to write WAEC. It will not be overwhelming. It won't be overwhelming. But if you are used to answering few questions and then all of a sudden this WAEC seems to have so many questions, it's scary, right? If you are going to face it for the first time in the exam, is just, I think, is overwhelming. So I think the best approach for that will be to already start answering questions like that beforehand. Okay. SS2 curriculum seem to usually contain a lot of important topics that usually appear in the Wassce examination. So I always advise that people exhaust it, either on your own as a student or even for teachers. When they are teaching you, I always advise that they finish teaching that syllable because it's so important. Even part of the SS3 is included, at least first half of it is very important. Okay. And the last but not the least, participating in marking of this examination. Unfortunately, your teachers aren't here yet, but I'm keeping the recording, so hopefully they will watch. But it's so important for teachers to mark the West African secondary school certificate examination, especially if they are teaching the class, because it helps you to know what is expected. So it's possible to solve a question and get the correct answer, but because you're not following the guidelines required for you to get the full marks, even though you got correct answer, but you still won't get your complete mark, which is a major part of what I have been explaining in our YouTube channel. If you go there, you will see a lot of content that I've put around on that. And we'll be talking about it for the students in a bit. So, but it's so important for teachers to be a part of that because it helps. When you get the marking guide, you use that to teach your students, and it helps you also to know what is important and what is not. To wrap up for the one we are in right now, I would like to show you a few ways you can take advantage of Stardust discovery. So, like I mentioned, we have a YouTube channel where we put in, a lot of work to provide information on how to pass your West African examination. And we also put out explanations on a lot of events happening around us that you do not understand, using physics, using science in general to explain those things in a simple way. So it's not technical at all, in a simple way. So you can follow us on YouTube, TikTok as well. We are on TikTok and on Facebook page, follow us. And this is my email. If you want to ask me any direct question, this email works and we will be able to respond to you. So help us subscribe. Yeah, subscribe to this channel. Like the video when you watch it and you like it. You can also share to your friends, comment on them, ask questions. Actually, use the comment to ask questions, and we check those comments to respond to your questions. Okay. Yeah. So I have a form that I could give you. It's useful for getting information like contact information from you so that I could keep in touch, send you important links when they come up and stuff like that in general. And you can also know that I have your contact and I can reach you. So I will give you the form to fill by the end of this. Is that all right?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording this part and I will give you some time to take a break before we start the one for the students.